by this point, I'd met my now wife Holly, and Holly, for some crazy reason, said, "Well, why don't you give up your normal job and do commentary for life? It's something that you love doing." And to this point, I was still doing voluntary for Chesterfield. I didn't really have any work to go to, so I was about to become a freelance sports broadcaster commentator without any regular work.
Hi, and welcome to the There's Another Way podcast with me, Adam Halverson.
And me, Pete Dolby. And you've come to the place where each episode we'll be shining a light on authentic people who have chosen an alternative path to their new normal to find another way.
Hey everyone, join us today for an engaging conversation with Paul Fisher, the dynamic freelance sports commentator whose voice has graced the airwaves of BBC Sheffield. He's worked with and learned from some of the best voices in the business. Fresh from his exhilarating coverage of the Cricket World Cup, Paul shares a compelling story of his career journey. Hear about the highs and lows of his initial career path, one he stumbled into only to realise it wasn't his true calling, and discover how, driven by the unwavering support of a special loved one, he pursued his true passion. This pivotal moment set him on an exciting new path, leading him to fulfil his dreams. Tune in for a captivating story filled with inspiration and invaluable life lessons. This episode is one you won't want to miss. There's Another Way. All right, well, I'm very pleased to introduce our guest today, Mr. Paul Fisher, who is a freelance sports commentator. Paul, how are you doing today?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Not too bad. Unfortunately, the weather hasn't followed it, has it, much this summer? But yeah, not too bad at all.
Very good. And I know you've just come back from Spain, so you're probably bitterly disappointed to come back to this. But whereabouts in the world are you dialing in from today?
Oh, I'm in Chesterfield in Derbyshire, so yeah, quite central for everything. So especially for work purposes as well. So it's dead handy for everything.
Brilliant. And just to set the scene, in terms of how we met, we were just chatting before we went on air. We realised it's actually 23 and a half years, I think, since we first met, because we've got a very good mutual friend who you went to school with, and Nicole and I met working in Disney, Mr. Matthew Alder. I'm sure he'll be listening. He was telling me he'll be listening out for his name, so we'll get that in early. And I remember at the time you telling me when we first met that you had a little one on the way, and you just told me she's how old now? 23?
Yeah, she's 23. So yeah, she's been and gone to university and everything. Now got a full-time job and that. So yeah, it's time flies, doesn't it? Really, I think. So you see little ones grow up as well pretty quickly, I'm afraid. So yeah, all's good, really. So yeah, I knew Matty'd want to mention anyway on the podcast. So yeah,
he's not getting any royalties
now,
for every mention. He's not
No,
getting.
no, no, not at all. He's not getting one. No.
Brilliant. So yeah, it's great to have you on. And the reason we got you on is I know you know a little bit about your background in terms of where your career started and where you ended up now. Obviously, you're pursuing your passion in sports. You're being involved in sports all the time, which is fantastic. But I guess if we rewind a little bit back to the old the Spy Right Chesterfield growing up days at school, and how that was for you, and any early memories. And I guess you said sport was big in your world when you were a little one as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely so. My dad's a big Chesterfield supporter. My granddad, a big Chesterfield fan as well as Derbyshire cricket. One's doing better than the other right now. So, but yeah, very much a sport. Much to the annoyance from my mum, who wasn't particularly into football and whatnot. So when because I'm a twin, you see, so obviously my brother as well was bang into football. So Gareth is he very much a sporting sort of side of things. So, but when you dominated the sort of late 70s, my dad was telling me the first sort of memory that I've got. He tells me during the 1978 World Cup that I couldn't sleep very well. So, which is this, it was I think it was World Cup was being held in Argentina, I think it was. Obviously played through the night because they're 5 hours or so behind. So the games were being played, and I couldn't sleep. So he used to bring me down and sit me on his knee watching various games like so on. So that was the first introduction to TV football, anyway. So from that point of view,
And do you think the
but
lack of
yeah,
sleep was due to the excitement of the World Cup being on, or just
I,
coincidental?
well, it could have been. It could have been. I can't remember it, but I can remember my first sort of involvement in watching football and listening to it was perhaps the '82 World Cup.
Yeah.
Um, Little bits and bobs before then, maybe in European football because English clubs were quite prevalent, obviously in the early '80s, as dominating European football, weren't they? So.
Mm.
That's when my first real sort of love of listening to it on the radio because you never got live games then. In the late 70s, early 80s, you had the cup finals. That's all really. You had the FA Cup final, the League Cup final, and the European Cup finals to watch, and then obviously, and then the World Cups and that. So yeah, it's just really listening to um, football on the radio was a real sort of highlight whenever I was allowed to, because the best thing my dad bought me was 1980 was bought me and our Gareth was a tape recorder, which obviously had FM, long wave and medium wave, which the tape then you could record it. You could record the audio, and it also had a mic on it as well, so that I could try and copy what the commentators were doing and saying, and record it onto tape and whatnot, and record commentaries. Completely illegal. You're not supposed to do that when it was, but I don't think I've been found out yet, so I think I'm all right.
Until
I think
now.
I've got away with it. So
So,
yeah,
so in your earliest memories of getting into sport,
yeah,
you paint the picture of the audio. We talked about this recently. For us, listening to, I mean, it's very easy to watch on TV these days, but there's something magical
yeah.
about listening to them painting the images and the describing the games on audio. So that was almost how you fell into love with sport, was listening to the audio version.
Radio all the
Yeah.
time. I would listen to radio at night. It'd be brilliant. Later on in life, sort of when I started loving cricket as well, was I loved listening to the Ashes in the middle of the night.
Mm.
So that's a separate thing later on when it got a bit older. But for now, just the obviously going to the games with my dad. My first time I went to watch Chesterfield was 1980. It was the last game of the season. Me and my brother were four. I can't remember it too much other than it was an open terrace at Saltergate, the old ground where Chesterfield have used to be, and there were no Exeter supporters there. They were playing Exeter. Chesterfield won 3-0. It was the end of a campaign where they had missed out on promotion. So the last game was nothing to play for. So I think that's why my dad took us, because football was rife with hooliganism at the time as well, and he was very worried about that. He'd stopped sort of going regularly to watch Chesterfield at that point because of that. So he didn't really want to take me and Gareth, who were, like I said, were about four. So that was a perfect chance for us to go and get out my mother's hair and stuff. So he'd take us to the match, and we went on the cross street end, which used to be the away end. So there was no extra fans there, so it didn't really matter. So we were just running around the floodlights. One nice thing that we did, Gareth and I, was when Chesterfield left Saltergate in 2010, the last game of the season after they played Bournemouth, which was the fourth tier game. They played Bournemouth, the Premier League club.
Yeah.
Obviously, Chesterfield are playing them and whatnot, beat them on the last game of the season. And me and Gareth managed to sort of recreate, not running around no, so we had this photo taken under the floodlights, so which was quite nice. So of it as well, because Saltergate's no more now; it's just a housing estate. So which is a real shame. So I saw some great games there. So that was my first real introduction to 1980. Didn't really go regularly to watch Chesterfield. Just dipped in now and again when my dad could take us. My mum was working Saturday, so that was fine. So my dad had something to do with us. So now and again he'd take us to football when it suited him and what fixture it was. But didn't really get to go until on a regular basis till 1983, 84 was probably the first real chance of going to watch Chesterfield.
Did you realise pretty early on that it was something you wanted to keep doing for a long time, as in supporting Chesterfield? Did you find a passion for it earlier on, or was it just something you enjoyed doing with your dad until later on?
Well, I loved the
Right.
program.
Yeah.
I loved going to watch it. We'd have to get there early and sit in the wing stand, just watching everything because the cot was to our left hand side, which was a big sort of standing area with a roof and everything. And I was just fascinated by the people that were in there.
Yeah.
But we used to watch it in the wing stand, just looking at that, and it's just look at the people, look at the players and the players' numbers and what, and all the visiting players had it in on the programs and that, so I used to check them off and that, so you can see all the stats inside the program as well. Um, some of the people who wrote in that program, I'm now quite good friends with, that follow Chesterfield, so that's been quite a nice little niche thing to do. Chesterfield in 83, 84 weren't great. They finished mid-table under John Duncan in the fourth division. But the year later, they were building a team. He was just a new manager then, really, John Duncan. Um, they'd sort of built this team up, and the following season was probably one of my favorite seasons of all time. I remember it quite clearly. Obviously they won the fourth division championship that year, 1984-85. He was a brilliant music scene as well. So he had Tears for Fears, didn't you, and Soft Cell and stuff like that. And the music being played over the tannoy. Um, getting into sort of music like that through radio. With this football team that weren't very pretty to watch. I can guarantee that they very rarely scored many goals. But they won the league that year, and they were dominating sides at home, and they were a long ball team. They were really like sort of kick it high and get a big striker and knock it down and smack it in. And it was very like intriguing to watch when you first learn about like sort of how tactics in football is, and you see this side that are just booting it long, and other sides can't cope with it. So, but it was a fascinating season to watch, and really got my love for it. And yeah, I've kept a sort of review of that season in a book that I've got that they did at the end of the year, and I've kept it, and it's great. It's got every game in, and all the stats in and everything. So it's sort of keeps my memory going of that particular season. So yeah, absolutely loved it. The match day experience as well. Going, get me wagon wheel and a bovril, and sitting in the corner, with my dad and my brother. So it was great. And when my dad couldn't take me, my granddad took me as well. So to games. So
And
yeah,
I'm
absolutely loved it.
guessing. I mean, we live near obviously Wycombe Wanderers here, and
I've been with Paul's brother.
okay.
Come on, he loved it.
And obviously, what you get is you get some of the fans who have a Premier League team as well, and I find that quite a lot. And I like going to
Yeah.
it, but I'm very realistic that I'm not a proper fan. It sounds to me that it's not like you've got a Premier League fan. It's like you're Chesterfield through and through, pretty much.
Oh, very much so. I'd perhaps go and watch football anywhere. Just a love of anything to go. Holly and I, my wife, we were on holiday in Marbella in the start of June, and we went to watch Marbella in the playoff semi-final that they had. I dragged Holly along to go and watch it. So this very small ground in Puerto Banús that they were playing, because they can't play in their big ground. So there's 1,500 there. The crowd was €20, really expensive to watch. But for a fourth tier playoff game that they had. But yeah, it was great atmosphere. So our executive seats were a plastic chair sat behind the goal, though, but
Right.
for €20. So yeah, they didn't expect that much of a big crowd, I don't think so. But yeah, I'd literally go and watch football anywhere really. So yeah. I really enjoy the experience of it, and yeah, just following Chesterfield's been quite good, and yeah, certainly those sort of early years watching them, they were all right, and then you gradually realise that it's quite fluctuating. The Chesterfield aren't as good as you want them to be.
What I think is really interesting about the story you're telling a few minutes ago was the fact that you remember the music that was piping out through the speakers. You remember it's almost like as a kid you're more receptive to all the stimuli that are there at the game. Whether it's the smell of the grass or just like I said, the players' numbers, the programs, and I know you take Ben to
Mm.
football a lot, and I think as you become older, you become a bit kind of desensitized to that in a way. But I think as a kid, it's so exciting, and you've got so much to look at and experience, and it maybe helps enforce those memories maybe as well.
Yeah, it does. I mean, when you go to a new ground as well, you sort of get that experience that you're just trying to weigh up where you are, because you see things on television, you're just trying to ponder, like, right, hang on a second, where is the television gantry? Where am I sat? Where's that? Where's where we're looking at here? Yeah, I guess it's just first experiences, isn't it? Really, is it as
Mm,
as a child, you're just sort of new to it, and you want more of it, don't you? My
yeah.
nephew Sam, he goes all the time now to watch Chesterfield, and he absolutely loves it, So he's got a season ticket now for 10 years, but he's running on the pitch at the end of the game, when they've won the league, and that, I think it's stuff that like I used to do, me and Gareth used to do when we were kids. So it was yeah, I think new experiences and whatnot are absolutely brilliant about that. And you do remember stuff more vividly, I think, as a
Mm,
as a child, so often the lines get a bit blurred, I think, over time, which is quite natural. But
mm,
you know, you remember your favorite players and opposition players, I think, that you managed to see, and yeah, it makes football a little bit more romantic as well.
mm,
So, I wasn't brought up on going to watch a big team. Obviously, Sheffield Wednesday were just up the road. They were in the first division at the time in the when did they get promoted? 84 from the second division, I think. I watched them a few times. Big crowds. My first memory of going to Hillsborough actually was when they played Wolves. I think that would have been like 1981, 82. Um, and there were over 30,000 there. And I remember being really scared.
mm,
Um, wasn't on the cop end. I think we are in either in the north stand or the south. So definitely sat down anyway. But seeing this massive cop to the right hand side, so it must have been the south stand then, uncovered as it was then. And there's around 20,000 people stood in it and everything, just thinking, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?" The noise. If somebody scores, I'm probably going to cry. So it's that noisy. So,
I've got a
um,
real fond memory of Hillsborough because when I grew up, my brother was a huge Mark Hughes fan, and
all right.
I probably gives away my team a little bit, but the I I went as we were just talking before we started recording. I was at university in Sheffield, and it just so happened. I think it was Blackburn because obviously he finished his career at Blackburn and we're playing Sheffield Wednesday. And finally, I got to actually see him live. Just, I mean, grey hair,
massive thighs.
absolutely useless. Still had massive thighs. So I've got a real soft spot for Hillsborough, but obviously, tragic story there as well. But I do think it's quite a special ground actually.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, there's a reason why the FA used to use it as a cup semi-final
Mm,
venue. So touching on that sad story really from that day. Incidentally, I was at the same day as Hillsborough. I was at Chesterfield against Port Vale, and at half time of the time, obviously there was a lot of misinformation coming through, but they'd said a wall had collapsed at Hillsborough. So obviously days before phones, you'd have found out pretty much straight away what had happened. But yeah, at half time they said the match had been abandoned and the wall had collapsed. So I just remember Dalen Atkinson played for Robbie Earle played for Port Vale as well, so former Premier League footballers for them. But yeah, vivid memories. The week later, I went to watch Sheffield Wednesday play at Derby, and my mum didn't want me to go to the game for obvious reasons. We were stood up on the terrace at the old baseball ground at Derby, and it was a packed terrace as well. And there's Derby to Sheffield's not far, so obviously a lot of Sheffield Wednesday supporters went down. Um, but mum didn't want me to go, but I managed to sort of take heed of what happened the week before and gone to the side of the terrace as well. So I wasn't anywhere near sort of the middle or anything like that. But I remember coming out of the ground afterwards, and the worst football violence I think I'd ever seen. I think after that game, there were bricks and bottles and being thrown about and everything. And I was like 14, and I was absolutely terrified of things happening. So it's quickly right, get on the bus and get home. So it was horrible.
I still think even today, like my lad is 11 now, but he's been going up to Old Trafford since he was about 4. Um, and it's taken quite a lot of adjustment, even in somewhere as safe, and as sort of well policed as Old Trafford in the modern day,
Yeah.
because we've had a lot of the Glazer protests. He got covered in that sort of like paint stuff one day, and it has taken him a while to acclimatize and adjust to it. There's been a few times where he's had some tears and
Scottish language and
yeah, and just sometimes, like, especially with how bad United have been, the vibe in the ground at times has been pretty bad. I mean, I think we were there, weren't we, when the Galatasaray fans sort of invaded, the home stand, and that wasn't pleasant. Obviously, I wasn't with Ben then, but yeah, I still think there's an element of it going around.
Definitely with the younger, we've seen a lot of since COVID. There's been obviously an explosion in football, and crowds are on the up, as we've seen. But there's also bringing like a lot of antisocial behaviour with it as well, from not mainly from adults, to be honest. It's mainly from kids who are not as well. Let's just probably say they're about sort of 16, 15, 16 that have grown up. And I don't know why that this disorder is starting to happen now, but many games are heavily policed at Chesterfield. You don't get away with it in the non-league seasons as well. In practice, it's probably even worse there as well when you get big clubs traveling to small grounds and that overtaking the fans and everything. So so yeah, it's something that needs to be sort of addressed, I think, pretty much soon. But I think kids will grow up, won't they, at times, and will maybe stop and become a bit more. I have to say though, it isn't as bad as it was in the sort of 80s.
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody is sort of policed, right? You can see with them not being standing up. You can stop a ticket going in, can't you, and everything. So
yeah.
So yeah, it's not as bad as we're probably perhaps painting, like, but yeah,
I remember
it's something that's grown up.
Yeah. Sorry, Paul. Yeah, I remember going to a game so after a year in Florida, traveled around the States and went to Mexico and went to a game at the Azteca Stadium.
Oh wow, yeah.
And there were only about 3,000 people there. It wasn't a big crowd, but it's a big old stadium. But I just remember the atmosphere compared to Premier League games was different level. It was so family friendly. There were kids there. It was a big carnival, really family vibe to it. And I just remember thinking it's so different to going to, a football match in the UK where it's very male dominated, quite toxic at times, but distinctly different.
What you get in the UK is that obviously it's a big island, but it's a small island in terms of you can travel distances quite short, so I'm not talking Plymouth to Carlisle, but you have to make an advent for away supporters, don't you? So you see in Spain, for example, traveling from Malaga to Sociedad, you'll not get that same level of away support. So you'll just get home fans. That's all. So they don't need to police it as much as you can just have stewards and stuff. So it's more the sort of home support getting against the away players that is the key that they need to look out for. So so in Britain it's quite a unique experience where you'll get a lot of support. Even in Belgium you won't get that many traveling supporters. It's more focused on sort of home fans, but in Britain you've got to have an element of away support, so that's why you get like sort of police to grounds and whatnot.
Yeah, and so obviously what happened for you was the romanticism and the experience of Chesterfield and football in general obviously really sunk in early doors. So but what were you sort of things like school, things like, was it starting to sort of was sport in general starting to kind of get into your psyche in a really meaningful way, or was it sort of how was sort of school progressing and as you grew up, and what sort of in the area, was there a particular, I don't know, career path you were thinking at that point, or how did that sort of progress?
Yeah, absolutely zero career path, none whatsoever. Didn't have a clue what to do. I love school, but school didn't like me.
Right.
That's how I sort of venture it. Bit of a daydreamer, to be honest. So yeah, I turned up to school. I attended quite well, but that's about it as far as it went education wise. Um, I think that as regards to sport, yeah, so it's sort of opening your eyes a bit, watching a bit of telly sport. The '85 Ashes was something I remember from that because I remember watching it when we were on holiday in Jersey. Sorry, the Scilly Isles we went to. Um, and listen to it on the radio. Obviously, traveling down there as well. So that's when I first really got into cricket. Cricket's my favourite sport.
Is it above
Out of
football?
the yeah,
Oh, right.
yeah, above football. Yeah, cricket's my favourite. I just sit and watch it all the
Mm.
time and play it. Football, I love football, but cricket is something I adore.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, then started to go and watch Derbyshire at Chesterfield whenever they played there. So really got into that. So yeah, I don't know whether it affected school or anything like that. But then I wanted to play cricket, you see, because I knew I wasn't a very good footballer. Um, I like playing football, but it just wasn't for me. I think I was a bit more wanted to be a bit more individualistic in a sport where it poses as a team game like cricket.
Mm.
So I could do my own thing. You know, I could bat and bowl and like I say, I could field, not very well, but yeah. But I just wanted to do that, and cricket I loved, and I'd play 7 days a week for my club as well. So fortunately, my uncle was chairman of a cricket club, not local to me though. It was Dronfield Woodhouse, which is just south of Sheffield. It's in Derbyshire, just on the border. So I played there for him, under 14s, under 16s, then gradually into the third team, second team, and eventually made the first team in that. So yeah, my days, my weekends in the summer were just taken up by playing cricket, really, and then going to watch football. Then yeah, going to school, which was just a passing time. So really, just during the week, waiting for football. So yeah, when I left school in 1992, I went to High Peak College in Buxton, and I did travel and tourism. So I was interested in geography as well. I think that goes hand in hand with football. You know, you find out where football clubs are inside a city, and it's something that you learn about that city and find out why there's like two football clubs in there and stuff. So, and geography about cricket as well, why there's 18 counties and all these countries and that, and then that kind of pastimed into a bit of travel and done a bit of traveling. Fortunately, with families, managed to get away traveling every sort of summer and whatnot. So it really loved me a little bit about geography and everything. So I did travel and tourism and at college and passed that, and but never really sort of wanted to do what I'm doing now at that stage. I never even gave it a passing thought that that could actually be a job into it. And
So where did the travel and tourism take you then? Did you sort of get into that field, or where
no, no, not really. No, I went to college in Durham to do, and I picked completely the wrong course. I went to do travel management. To I don't even know why I did it, but it had a business element to it, and I didn't want to like do any business stuff. I wasn't interested in setting up my own business or anything with travel, and I don't know why. And I really should have sort of pulled out pretty quickly, but I did the year and I completely failed my exams in that. So then I was at a loss of what to do.
Do you think that's more of a personal thing, as in individually you didn't really know what you wanted to do? Because I look back at school and I don't remember there being masses of information on career guidance. There was some crappy computer program you could put what you like to do and it spat out like 6 jobs. It's like, well, that's not really going to help me. There didn't seem to be an array of information available on what careers were out there. Or do you think
Well, I think in the place where Chesterfield is, I think I was just told, well, you can go and work at Staveley Chemicals, or this company called Rome Pooling that did plastics or something. So
Mm.
or Brett Plastics or something. They were the work experience that they had. But I managed to get into I think I wanted to just work in a travel agent. I think at the time that was sort of thing that I was thinking about doing. I did a work experience at Co-op Travel in Chesterfield. Really enjoyed it. Didn't enjoy all these people going on holiday and everything, but I enjoyed sort of booking the experience for them. I think that's what I kind of liked to do. But as regards to like sort of job careers, yeah, there wasn't really anything at school. You were kind of left to your own devices. Um, my grades wouldn't have attended to anything anyway. There'd have been, if a careers advisor had looked at me at some point during the year, it could have put me down for anything, literally anything, because um, I didn't have any sort of real education as to where or I was progressing as a student. There was absolutely nowhere I was going. So you could have put me down for anything. I could have done anything, but I wasn't getting there education wise. They actually took me in. I think if that was the case. So no, I never really had a path. I never no hated exams. I hated them.
Mm.
And I've never believed in exams anyway as being a defining core of any person. And it is quite personal that you shouldn't be defined at the end of a year or the end of 2 years as to who you are as a person by you faltering under pressure in a huge place where you've got, I don't know, 60 other kids next year under intense pressure themselves. I mean, you've learnt different subjects for the past, I don't know, month or so to try and put you in when you've got at least two exams of a subject on each day. I think it's a horrible experience, and it's one thing that I never want to go through, and that's probably quite traumatic. So yeah, hated it, hated exams, and I never ever want to do one again.
So I've seen it last year with my son, and it will happen to my daughter next year as well. And it's such an intense period of
Yeah, it's
high
horrible.
pressure that never really replicates itself in the future anyway. And I mean, okay, you're under pressure in the working environment, but not to that extent where you're studying 12 subjects and having to do exams in them all or whatever. It's
No,
crazy.
I mean,
Yeah,
I think for me, sorry, Paul, just quickly, I think the for me, I mean, it's a big component of what obviously this podcast is about, but it's also, I couldn't agree with you more, Paul. I mean, I think it's completely backwards to me, and the other thing as well, regardless of even the exam process and let's say the pressure of it, the labeling of you failed, to sort of say to a kid at that age you failed anything is ludicrous. But it's, I think for me, I mean, I could go into the subject for hours about it, but I
mm,
think it's also the fact that you're getting effectively indoctrinated with subjects, information, which you've got no choice about. It's a version of that reality. You look at things like history or whatever. It's like, well, you're teaching me something which is a version of it. And yeah,
yeah,
I'm very cynical of it. And you look at other systems, you can see countries are getting it so much better and working by different metrics. So
Mm.
I think it is a really important point.
yeah. I like coursework. I like building to something. Take your time over a thing. And I appreciate teachers are under pressure, and it's not their fault that at the end of the day there's an exam system there that's there. That's archaic in my opinion. But coursework should be the way that it's done, and building and learning in that way because every child learns differently.
Mm.
They just do, and you shouldn't be put under pressure by the end of the year, end of term, end of year exam that at the end of the day that so defines who you are and what you put down in your CV going forward at the end of your life. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So yeah, it's horrible, and I don't agree with it. So yeah, so I've pretty much failed my exams, as you can probably find out from that. Hated it, yeah, hated it. But I always enjoyed the sort of studying part of it. I liked going to school. I just didn't like the pressure at the end of the day and completely
Mm.
wilted and faltered in that. And this is where it wasn't recognized in me as well. So, but then I was a bit of a lost soul, I think. So at that particular point, say I could have done anything really in that, and football commentary or even doing anything involved in sport really wasn't the forefront of my mind when really it perhaps should have been.
No
But I never put.
broadcasting GCSE or anything that would.
No, there is now, isn't there?
Right.
So there's plenty of courses now, so that you can do. So, but yeah,
And you
but
mentioned your dad, your mum and dad earlier. Did they have sort of any direction or any idea where they wanted you to sort of head, or was it, were they sort of pushing you in any one direction, or?
I think my dad, mum, perhaps just wanted me to get a job. I think like so, just to do something. Yeah, because I think they understood that like I couldn't really be um educated too much in that respect. Like so, I I just couldn't like so I get to a point. I think they just wanted me to be okay and whatnot. So and just get a job and just be all right. So yeah, after college, really, when I went to Durham for a year, I left home at 17 to go to Buxton. Um, First experience of living away. Came home at weekends because it's not far, so you just get the bus back. But that was like, it could have been the other end of the world for me. Like, so going, oh, I'm going back to college, like, so, and whatnot for the week. So stayed up there, properly learned to drink and that. So when you're sort of 17 and that, so yeah, and then went up to Durham for a year to New College in Durham, and again just sort of wasted my days really. Chesterfield having a good season, so I used to come back down on the train. It's like you were paid to go to college then, you see, so you didn't have to have a loan or anything. They gave you a grant, which was a stupid idea. So just giving me money to go out and spend it on drink. It was fantastic. So you were supposed to pay the rent with it, by the way, like so as well. So which I kind of did, but the rest of that was just beer. So yeah. So I used to go back to Chesterfield to watch the scene because they got promoted that year. I used to get the train down to watch the games and yeah, it was what was that 1995. So I'd have been 20. So yeah,
When was the big FA Cup run? Was that
a
97?
couple of years later. So
Yeah.
97, yeah. So they've already been to Wembley to watch Chesterfield play for the first time in 1990, and Dion Dublin broke my heart by scoring a ex-Manchester United,
Mm.
Dion Dublin, of course, 10 minutes to go. And that was a horrible journey back from Wembley, back on the coach, and all these Cambridge fans mocking us. So in the coach car parks, horrible experience losing at
Mm.
Wembley. It doesn't get any easier.
Mm.
But then, yeah, second time it went, they won. They beat Bury in the fourth division playoff final, so that was great. So fantastic celebration for that. Even though I should have been in Durham, like I say. So, but yeah.
You've been
So I
paid to
left.
be there.
Yeah, I left there, and I didn't know what to do at all. So my uncle gave me a job working as a sort of electrician, sort of apprentice on a new sort of housing estate that was being built there. So I spent a year doing that really.
How was that?
Um, um, Not that stimulating to be honest. It was all right. But yeah, it's not something I wanted to do really. I think money was all right though. It was okay.
But then in
For
that
what I was
sense, it's good
doing.
experience because you're trying something that's completely different and realize it's not
Yeah.
you, but that's another one chalked off, I guess.
Yeah, it's working on a building site. So it's always one into it as well that you can add to. So if you don't become a footballer, you work on a building site or become a pub landlord or something like that, don't you? So yeah, so I did that, and then um, the lads that I knew from uh, college in Durham. A couple of them were living in Newcastle. They'd gone to progress from college into university at Newcastle. Um, and they said to me, "Well, there's a spare uh, sort of room in our house. Do you want to come and move up?" So I did. I just decided to just to go up there, just to try and experience what it was like moving up there. I thought, well, I'll go up there, get a job, and take it from there. So I just did. I just decided to sort of up sticks, go and move to the centre of Newcastle. Signed on when I got there, started looking for work. But it took me, God, it took me what, 7 months, I think, before I got a permanent job. Well, fixed term contract anyway, at a government department for pension regulations. So I didn't have any sort of qualifications to get this job. I think they were just looking for anybody from the job centre, really. So it's, they'd get points, if they pick somebody who came through a job centre interview or something like that. So somehow I managed to get that job there. It was a fixed term, and then I got renewed as well for another year. And by that time, Chesterfield were doing quite well again. So I was travelling back down to watch the FA Cup games, going to Old Trafford for the semi-final, then Hillsborough for the replay and whatnot. So yeah, so I'd really sort of irregularly followed Chesterfield, but I followed them all the time, but I couldn't go to games all the time. So yeah, so then moved to Newcastle, and
I came to see you in Newcastle with Matt. We came out
you did.
We came to a game and went on the a night on the town. I seem to remember.
What game did we go to? Do you remember?
When I say it was Newcastle Rangers.
Oh, it was. Yes, that's
Was it?
right. It was a pre-season friendly, wasn't it?
Right.
And there were thousands of Rangers fans there, weren't there?
Yeah.
And it was a double header because Sampdoria played Sporting Lisbon, I think, on the
Oh, it
same
might have
day.
been a little tournament. You might have been right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mini tournament, I think. Yeah, Shearer played for Newcastle, didn't he?
You did, yeah.
So,
And we saw an ex-striker sat behind us. I can't remember who that was, but yeah, I remember that because I remember I'd never been to Newcastle before, not to a game, and I remember you get the stereotypical ground in the middle of a town, and literally
yeah,
around the corner from the high street, and it's literally right in front of you. It was
yeah,
such a
incredible in the city
yeah.
centre. Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely loved Newcastle, and I still love Newcastle to this day. I spent 8 years there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and I adore it. I adore the city, and you can see why Newcastle is so centralized in itself that it doesn't need anything. It's got its own airport. It's got all the sort of top brands and everything like that. You don't need to travel to London or any other city. You can just stay within its place, and the place itself. That the people are absolutely brilliant. So just an amazing time I had there, and I've still got some good friends now as well. So yeah, just brilliant. So an amazing time I had there. So did you stay at my flat then?
I think so, yeah.
Stayed?
A bit sketchy
Yeah,
on the
okay.
detail. We went for an Indian, I remember that. But
Oh, okay.
it was a good week. But you say about the people. So we went to Manchester United versus Newcastle a couple of seasons ago. Maybe was it pre-COVID or not? I can't remember. Maybe it wasn't that long ago. And afterwards, we went for a beer in a bar near Old Trafford, and it was heaving. And the only space was at a table with a load of Geordies there, Newcastle tops on. And
Yeah.
we sat down, and there's a little bit of discussion about the game, and then we having selfies with it. We had a right laugh.
I know. I mean, it started a little bit sour, didn't it?
It did.
Because they were being quite cheeky, and I was really hacked off because
They'd stifled the game. I think
it was just so boring. They dragged that a 1-1 draw, didn't they?
I think the ball was in play for 46 minutes or something.
It was they went through that period of just keeping the ball out of play. It was really weird, and I was really
Was that Steve Bruce? Was Steve
It
Bruce?
was,
yeah, it was.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah. And these guys were sort of being a bit chippy, and I kind of bit back pretty hard. And then literally within 3 minutes, we were all hugging and jumping around and having an amazing. They were absolutely great lads.
They were so good. If you're ever in Newcastle, man, come on a bit.
Are they Jamaican?
Yeah.
Great, yeah.
Yeah.
Great impression, Pete.
Thanks. Yeah. Not my strong point. But yeah, it was that was a fun time. But
no, it's a great city and great, and obviously great football culture up there as well.
Yeah, oh, indeed. Yeah, I mean, if you look at Newcastle United encompass everything. They say it's a one team town, whatnot, which is not necessarily true because you spread your wings out. You've got loads of sort of non-league teams that are there as well that are just engulfed by Newcastle. And it always amazes me how Gateshead don't have many more crowds than they do. You know, they get probably a regular about 900 or something like that. And for a place as big as Gateshead, that should be getting more crowd. They should be getting filtering through to watch them. And maybe they will do with the Saudi money that Newcastle have got. People really are struggling to afford to watch Newcastle these days. And the problem with the Premier League is that it's also, taking generations away from fan bases away from the where they want to be. Manchester United is not just a club now that can involve the sort of local people from Manchester anymore. You've got a lot of tourists that go, so you can't encompass that, and it just gets too big. And Newcastle's experiencing that right now at the minute, that the ground's not big enough. Manchester United want to develop their ground and make it big enough for more people to go, and which is great. That's good. Then we might maybe get more like sort of fans going and everything to experience. But it's just getting too big. But in Newcastle itself, there's lots of little tentacles around. Like, so my friend now still supports Newcastle, but he can't go every week, and he supports a club called Heaton Stannington, so near next to where he lives, and they just got promoted, and it's been brilliant. You can go and have stand by and watch football, a non-league level, and just stand and have a drink, so as well. So it's quite nice, So there's none of this. Sort of the experience where you're having to become a member to buy a ticket, really. So if I just wanted to rock up and watch Man United these days, I can't do it. I've got to join a year-long membership course and pay 40 quid before I've even started to buy a ticket for the game. So it's really, really unfortunate the way that's progressed in many respects. So
Yeah, definitely. And my son plays for a team called Beaconsfield, and they're the the men's team is in, I think, seven or eighth tier, I think. Decent level, very
Yeah.
good level, and it's got a small stadium. And absolutely, like you said, I'm amazed actually that more people haven't worked out that you can have a really fantastic day out there on a Saturday. You can great bar, really, really good little stand. And it is funny, isn't it? It's kind of, and the football's good. It's obviously not. It's not. It's not got your Portuguese and Brazilian and French stars in it, but it actually, if you sit there, it's amazing how you can get into the game. And obviously, a lot more teams, even at, well, you watch a lot more football than me, but obviously, a lot of teams at lower level are playing proper football. It's not long ball football everywhere you go, or overly direct football. There's proper football being played by real athletes, even at that eighth tier. It's proper quality stuff.
Yeah, they have to. They have to keep up with the Joneses, don't you? Really. So if you want to get anywhere, you know, there's a local team to me, Staveley, who have got a sort of 4G pitch that they've got, and it's a great money spinner for them because they can just rent out it before the game. They'll have kids playing on it before the main game at 3. So it's brilliant. They'll sort of rent out the pitch to Chesterfield under 23s, and stuff. So yeah. It's good money spinning. There's a lot of clubs being run the right way at non-league level as well, and to play football the right way as well. So yeah, that's good to see. So yeah.
So yeah, no, it really is. And we all had experiences of a club's been running correctly in the wrong way, unfortunately.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
So you said, Paul, and I'm struggling to not call you Saul because that's how I've known you for the last 23 years.
That's my nickname, yeah.
Yeah. So 8 years in Newcastle there. So you said you started working the bank. Was it in the bank you started working?
Yeah, so I worked in the government, but then went for a position at Barclays.
Okay.
As a cashier, and managed to get the job as well, which I was surprised about. So first real proper job as well. It wasn't it was a permanent contract. So I thought that's great. So having to go and work there and like on customer facing as well. So I'd never really sort of been customer facing, although we sort of travel and tourism training did sort of helped me be a little bit more customer facing. So absolutely loved it. Get the uniform as well. So it splashed out a pension and everything. So I was a proper adult then. God, how old was I then? So 23. So yeah, getting their first real job. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, I absolutely loved working for Barclays. It was great. Moving about different branches as well to experience where. So one day I could be working in the centre of Newcastle. The other time I could be working at Whitley Bay branch. So I'd have to work out how to get there, get on the metro or drive. So yeah, and then perhaps got a permanent base really at at Haymarket branch, the top of the city centre, because there used to be loads of branches in Newcastle. I think there's only a couple now, I think. But worked as a travel cashier there, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it, because they used to get people coming in from Newcastle United when they were playing in Europe, and the local currency just before the euro came in, so you'd have to exchange or order it in and everything. So I always found it a little bit fascinating with that. So, but absolutely loved it.
What did you find
Selling
fascinating? Was it the
travel
people
insurance.
watching, or the interacting with the people, or what was it that you enjoyed?
Yeah, fascinating where they were going,
Yeah.
first and foremost, and different currencies, different places in the world again,
Mm.
that I'd look to see. And I loved speaking to people, really, I think, and just finding about their stories and whatnot, even the small period of time that you had to speak to them. And then
Mm.
you had to try and sell them something, which was never real my experience. But you just point them in the right direction if they wanted something. But trying to spot off this small screen what you could spot, whether how much savings they had, and they could push it somewhere else. Like so, never really good as a salesman, me, but always get to push them in the right direction towards the personal banker who then got to sell them certain stuff. So it's a bit like leads, I think that's what they call it, don't they? So
Mm.
so yeah, but didn't do too much with that. But I just love the sort of just working there was great. I always wanted to progress. It wasn't great money, to be fair. When I first started, I think it was something like £7,000. So per year. So it wasn't great money, but experience I had 3 years, and it gradually progressed quite high. So but then obviously looking for another job, getting a bit cocky, I think. Really, I think in my respect, went to get a job at Nationwide in the mortgage centre. Now I knew nothing about mortgages, nothing at all as how they'd come about. So so yeah, I managed to get this job at Nationwide Mortgage Centre, but I think from day one I hated it. I
Really?
hated it. I should never have left. Yeah, hated it because it was dealing with wasn't dealing with customers. It was dealing with um brokers of estate agents and financial advisors and solicitors as well. And I just couldn't deal with it because it was the progress of them going through the mortgage process with Nationwide. And yet, as you've all done these days about mortgages, you want to know the latest step, don't you, and whatnot. So you want to find out about them, find out about what's happening, and you're eager to get the information. Well, in this company, it was just like sort of one step at a time. So, you had just bits of information to give them. So, and they'd ring up again. I can't tell you anything. And they get really angry and dealing on behalf of like their customers and whatnot. Um, so yeah, you got put into different bits of it. The starting process, the middle process, and the end where you have to deal with solicitors. I gradually just sort of lost my heart for it. Really, it was just getting really, really tedious. Really hated it. Hated it.
You realised that pretty quickly once you moved there.
I think yeah, I think it took me about I don't know, probably around maybe about a year, I think,
Mm.
before I realized this is not something I want to do. I'm kind of stuck here a little bit.
What year would this have been?
That had been 2002.
Because
Um,
there's a reason I'm asking that question. And I don't know whether you're thinking about your next step or not, but I remember in 2001, I
yeah,
was working for a summer on Cape Cod in America,
yeah,
and Matt and Nikki were over staying with us. And
yeah,
it was when England played Germany away. Do you remember?
yes,
Under
yeah.
Sven. I think it was 2000. Well, it was either 2000 or 2001. And we weren't able to watch the game over there. So Matt put a call into you, and you very kindly commentated the highlights of the game after the game, and you walked us through step by step and described
Did
us
I?
beating them you maybe don't remember. You described
No,
the game and how we won. Was it 4-1 or 5-1 we went away, didn't
5-1.
we?
5-1.
Yeah,
5-1. Because we
5-1.
hadn't seen it. And you kept the suspense going, and you commentated and told us over the phone what happened. And we were on listening, like, eagerly trying to find out what the score was. It was brilliant. And that would have been
I can
2001. So I was remembering back to that, and you must have already had half an eye on it at that point, the commentary stuff, because
Well,
you did a
maybe,
very good
yeah.
job of it.
No, I thought, well, thank you, but I can't remember that at all. Remember that?
Maybe to be honest
Remember
with
that
you.
game? Yeah. Well, remember being watching the game on television. Would have been Katie, my daughter, would have been a few months old, and by that point, 4 or 5 months old, and she was in my arms trying to get her to sleep because it was kickoff was around sort of 7ish.
Mm.
Trying to get sleep, put her to bed before then I could settle down and watch the game. But every time England kept scoring, so they kept waking her up. So in the end, I just put her in this rocking chair in front and just put her to sleep after the game had finished. So yes, that's a vague memories of that. So that was September 2001, I would have thought
It
ish.
was.
So around that, yeah,
Yeah, it was coming to the, we only did May to September. So it must have
yeah,
been just as we were coming to the end of our time there. So yeah, it would have been, yeah.
yeah.
So I had a similar story with my daughter when she was I was rocking her watching England play and Frank Lampard scored and I cheered and she didn't stop crying for about half an hour. I was like, yeah. But yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that vividly, that commentary, and it was such an epic
Oh,
performance. I mean, no one ever expected us to go to Germany and win. I don't remember seeing that in my lifetime. I know we have subsequently won there, but that was an incredible performance. Yeah.
it was, yeah, phenomenal performance that led to the 2002
Mm.
World Cup, didn't it? And I was working at Nationwide then, and went in early to watch a game. I think when England beat Argentina, I think, or one of the late. I think it was about 12 o'clock kickoff. We went to the pub, I think, to watch that game. I remember Beckham scoring that penalty
Mm.
and redemption really for him.
Mm.
And then. Yeah, so gradually sort of losing heart at about 2003. And by sort of, and I'm working this on European Championships as well. So European Championship 2004, being held in, where was it held in
Oh, good
2004?
question. I can't remember that.
The Euros.
Oh, I can't
I can't,
remember.
no, I can't. I think
2008 was Portugal, wasn't it?
Was it?
yeah,
Would it have been Spain? No, not Spain. I don't know.
I
2004.
can't remember.
Was
Was it
was that
France?
Germany?
No, that was. I can't remember.
It could have been, I can't remember. No, that was 2004. Was 2004 Portugal?
Maybe.
Well, I'm asking my trusty friend, Mr. Google.
2004 could have been Portugal, but I remember watching the games then, because England did quite well, didn't they? And just thinking that I'm just gonna have to sort of leave this. Is getting to a point now where just
Portugal, yeah.
I,
It was.
I
Yeah,
just
good
Portugal
knowledge.
2004,
Yeah.
and just hated just going to this workplace. So just didn't like it at all. It was affecting everything. By this point, like so, I was living. Um, Me and Katie's mum had separated, so I was living in a flat, which Pete you visited. So, um, which was great. It's great. It looked great flat. It wasn't anything to do with that at all. Just living on my own was like quite
Mm.
depressing. And sort of having Katie at sort of weekends and whatnot. So at this point, I'm just thinking, right, I'm gonna have to sort of sort myself out here a little bit. Um, and decided sort of early 2005, decided to sell the flat and move back to Chesterfield.
Mm.
So moving back to your mum and dad's house after this particular point was not a great thing to do. But unfortunately, Matt, our friend, managed to find me a job working for East Staffordshire Borough Council.
Mm.
So yeah, I managed to get a job there, and again, customer facing. So it was a bit like being in the bank again. So that's kind of what I sort of do. Again, not even thinking about anything to do with sort of football, really. But in the background, I'd sort of became editor of this Chesterfield stats site, which was called Footy Mad at the time. And they were on it, sort of precursor to various websites that you get now with a load of stats on. So this was early doors. So 2003, 4, I decided to do it from Newcastle. So I thought, well, it's something to do. I can start writing a bit about what's happening at Chesterfield Football Club, being out of the sort of loop a bit, listening to commentaries, early commentaries from over the internet that they had at that particular point. An early sort of I Follow type of thing, or MUTV radio, that type of thing. It was quite a unique thing. It was great that I could do it. They just plug into an ISDN line, dial up a number, and this commentary would come out of it, and it's Chesterfield described at Saltergate, and it was great by two people, and it was brilliant, So obviously getting fed off that, the internet's great for stuff where you can just look at stories and you can sort of reproduce them in a different way, giving credit to the original story, of course. So I ran this sort of website. I don't know how many views it had or anything like that. I'm not too sure about that, but I used to provide information for Chesterfield supporters and whatnot, even if anybody didn't look at it at all. It was there. And so moving back to Chesterfield, obviously it kind of kept that going, which was really good. For about a year. And then I moved from East Staffordshire Borough Council to North East Derbyshire District Council in another different job that wasn't customer facing this time. So again, I didn't quite like it, I don't think. But I was there for about 4 years. The people I worked with were absolutely brilliant, absolutely loved them. But I didn't like the job. So, but in that meantime, the offside of things was that I'd started to get myself noticed in terms of, first of all, the website. And then I met a couple of people for the website to interview them. One of them was Phil Tooley, who is sort of doyen of Chesterfield Football Club. He knows just about everything about them. He's done broadcasting. He's done selling programs. He's been on the board of the club. So I got to meet him, interview him for the website, and then I got to meet other people, the PA announcer, for example, Howard Burrell, quite know this to this day, and Phil, and Richard Stacey, who ran the official website at the time. So my name was sort of being pushed about a bit, and there was an occasion when the Chesterfield Football Club signed a deal to sign with a local radio station, Peak FM, and Peak FM halfway through the season ran out of money, I think, and they couldn't afford to take on the commentary anymore, so they needed volunteers to do it. And Rich, I don't know why Rich picked me, but he said, "Do you want to do it?" And I said yes straight away. I said yeah, immediately thinking I'd just be on as a sort of pundit to somebody who's doing the actual commentary, so that I'd just chip in now and again.
Like a co-com.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of. Yeah. Really. So, somebody describes the action, then I just say, yeah, oh yeah, can you see over there? You know what a pundit does, don't you? So yeah. Yeah. So he said, right, first game, Tuesday night, they're playing in a Johnson's Paint Trophy game against Chester. Not a great deal will happen. Phil will do the commentary. You just chip in when he asks you. So I turned up 17 hours early, as I usually do, because I was like nervous and excited, and I thought it was great. So by this point I'm 31 and again excited by a Johnson Paint Trophy game against Chester, so on a Tuesday night. So so it turns up, sits down, Phil starts, does the commentary, gets me to chip in now and again. 20 minutes after there's been 3 goals or something, there's problems with the equipment, and it sort of goes kaput. So I think, great. Right, okay, it's great. So 20 minutes in, no more commentary. They have to flick to something to another radio station. So Radio Sheffield were doing commentary. I think they took the rest of the commentary for that. So a big failure. First game.
Oh God.
Great. So I saw Rich after the game. We told him, because he was in charge of the website, so he was also by de facto in charge of the commentary and whatnot. So says, right, okay. So we'll use this different kit. So we got the kit ready for Saturday. And you'll be doing commentary with Stuart Basson. So I said to him, so who's doing lead commentary then? And he went, well, you are. Stuart's going to do the punditry. So at this point, so I had a sort of out of body experience and just thinking, right, okay, I'm going to have to now do some preparation for it and also learn how to do lead commentary. Fortunately, like I kind of got a bit of experience, just listening to commentaries how it's done. So so I managed to do the first game. Equipment was fine. I was shown how to work it anyway. Got through it. Really good commentary. And over the course of the remainder of the season, Rich sometimes did the commentary as well, but sort of punditry away games. Stuart would do them at home. Just built up a really good rapport with them. We were getting good listening figures because away from home you get more than you do at home because obviously the fans, and so built up my sort of knowledge of what to kind of do
Were you getting any
by
feedback from people listening, or
getting lots.
do you need to hit
Yeah,
the right note, or delivering
yeah,
it the right way? Yeah.
getting lots, and it was mainly positive, except when things went wrong with the equipment. So which would happen irregularly, so unless we couldn't get a line and that, whatnot, we'd have problems there. But feedback wise, everything was fine. They were happy for me to continue. And what in the meantime, I met the other media guys there that were there. Rob Daly was then they'd signed up at the start of the next season because Peak had then found some money, so they started doing commentary again, but not full match commentary at home game because they weren't allowed to. Um, that was exclusive for Chesterfield people. So Rob Daly, who now works for Spurs TV, he does the commentary for them, and Satanta and other people there. Callum Williams was doing BBC Radio Sheffield, so he was doing reports and the occasional games, and he now works for Apple TV doing MLS games in America.
Wow.
So these were the sort of people that he kind of met, and that's they were first starting. And when Rob Daly couldn't do it, Chris Parrott does it, and he does stuff for UEFA now. And you might have heard Steve Crossman on Five Live does a sports report and other games. Is out there in Germany at the minute. He was working for BBC Radio Sheffield, covering when Callum couldn't do it. So that's where he first started in local radio as well. So I got to know these people over the course of a few years. So I was doing the Chesterfield commentary for a good. This is voluntary as well for a good 4 years, whilst working, um, uh, at North East Derbyshire District Council. I wasn't particularly liking that job. By this point, I'd met my now wife Holly, and Holly, for some crazy reason, said, "Well, why don't you give up your normal job and do commentary for life? It's something that you love doing." And so at this point, I was still doing voluntary for Chesterfield. I didn't really have any work to go to, so I was about to become a freelance sports broadcaster commentator without any regular work. So resigned from North East Derbyshire District Council, and then through speaking to people, managed to get commentary. Rob Daly was a fantastic help for this. Because he managed to speak to his sort of agent, and I got took on for his agent to do commentaries and games on. They're called watch and bets on Bet365, for example. There's various other companies as well, but you're doing for various games where commentaries over the top of a game in Chile, for example, or Belgium, or anywhere in the world you were doing commentaries for. So I'd have to go down to London to work for a company called Perform, to go and sit in a studio and commentate on a Chilean game at 2 a.m. in the morning, so followed up by a Japanese game at 6 a.m. and stuff.
Wow.
So this is where my love of research comes into it. I absolutely adore research and trying to find out little bits and bobs about a player, for example, because trying to find out about a Japanese player, from I think is incredible. A really, really hard task to try and find out at that point. But yeah, absolutely loved it. Loved doing the games. Loved doing that. It was tiring traveling up and down to London from Chesterfield. Sometimes coming home at in the morning. When you've just done two games, it's exhausting. But yeah, building up the rapport with that, and then getting plenty of practice at it, and getting some coaching as well from Tim White, who was an established broadcaster as well, commentary guy, and so pushing that sort of proper job beside, getting regular work with this, and yeah, it was really good, and absolutely loved it. So
That was incredibly supportive of Holly to say, "Why don't you, give it up and follow your dream?" I think that's
ma-
an
massive support. I wouldn't have been able to do it without. I can't do this job without her now.
yeah.
So it's just incredible, brilliant, supportive,
Mm,
fantastic from her as well. She could see something in me, in a bit of a passion,
yeah.
and take it forward, like that. So yeah, I'm ever so grateful to her for that.
Amazing. And when you were experiencing, I mean, I don't even know where you begin to research a Japanese game at 2 in the morning. I know you did your prep ahead of time, but finding out all that information, it must have been a fantastic experience. Did you have any mentors in that time that you looked up to in the broadcasting world that you'd maybe try and get some coaching from, or some experience or anything like that?
Well, for many years, I'd listened to obviously radio from previously, but commentators like Peter Jones, Brian Butler, they'd long since passed away at this particular point. But you can check on the internet, hear their
Mm,
commentaries and how descriptive they are, and how and that's the key thing, is just it's just words, it's just telling people what's happening, and being descriptive about it. You need to point out where the ball is to, just imagine that you stood next to a blind person, for example. You've just got to point out exactly where things are, haven't you, really? I
mm,
think it's as simple as that, so or as difficult, depends how you want to make it, so. But other commentators that I'd learned from, Mike Ingham being one of them as well, Alan Green, modern day John Murray. I think he's really
mm.
good.
Yeah.
Different sports as well, like uh so Jonathan Agnew at cricket, Mike Costello when he does
Mm,
boxing and athletics, he's absolutely brilliant. Um, Mainly BBC people, obviously, that I kind of listen to. So yeah, gradually I was getting better and better, and what I thought was getting better. And then Callum left to go to America for BBC Radio Sheffield, and he recommended me to become the sort of Chesterfield reporter for them. So giving up the voluntary covering Chesterfield every week and doing it for the BBC, getting paid to do it. Wow, and this is
yeah.
I'm getting paid now, and I'm getting paid before to do commentaries, but now I'm getting paid by the BBC to do it in local radio, to do something I absolutely adore. Um, so absolutely, I couldn't wish for anything better, and it's been like that really since, gradually building up a bit more of a portfolio, working for other companies. I've worked for quite a few BBC local radio stations as well, doing various commentaries for them for Radio Kent, Hereford, and Worcester.
Mm.
I've got I've got my own kit to take, because you have to get like your own kit to take to the games to produce and whatnot. And I've got a car, so I'll work for anybody. So have car will travel, I think. So
And,
yeah.
and just going back to that decision to leave the job that you weren't keen on, and because I think also one of the things I'm always interested in tapping into is the viability and how people make that sort of brave step. um I guess there was a lot to consider financially. There was a lot to consider
Mm.
sort of, can you walk through a little bit of that process, just in terms of how did you actually make it work and how did you start? Because I think that's also, it's a really hard thing for people when they want to follow their passion, is they just sort of go back into that pragmatic mindset where you think, well, I can't afford it. I've got a mortgage. So, I've just got to do it. I just got to crack on and ignore my passion.
Yeah, well, again, I'll reiterate that I couldn't have done it without Holly. So we were okay to pay the mortgage for the. I think we were renting at the time, actually. We were renting. Yeah, I think we were renting at the time anyway. So yeah, I couldn't have done it without her. So then trying to sort of build up your own portfolio is quite difficult when you haven't got anything to back up
Mm.
your ideas. So So yeah, again, it was a bit more like word of mouth. But I'll thank Rob Daly as well for giving me enough work to sort of help. I know it was sort of over the weekends and nothing really during the week, and there was a lot of traveling involved, and I had to sort of do my expenses for the first time, and even that's a bit daunting, isn't it, as well? Um, but Holly helped me with that, so I'm very I can't thank her enough for that as well. Yeah, it is scary giving up a job, but if you don't like the job, then don't do it, So try and follow if you're passionate. Look, I've been extremely lucky. I have to fall into it right now. For any up and coming broadcaster to coming into the positions are already filled right now. It's getting tougher and tougher and tougher for work in many respects for anybody who's sort of junior. At the minute, I've got quite a few clients that I work for, so I'm all right. But again, it was quite scary going from like a regularly paid job to then having nothing at all coming in. Yeah, if you'd asked me now, would I do that? Yeah, no is the answer. I don't think I would. I don't think I'd have enough courage. Um, but I think you're at a point where you push to a certain point where there's nothing I can do with this job now. I don't like it. I'm gonna have to leave it. So yeah, so I got to that point where I've been sort of pushed into a corner with that, and I didn't really want it anymore. And then I was desperate to sort of do this and push my way forward by just putting your name out there, um, really making yourself available for work. Unfortunately, obviously giving up a 9 to 5 job every week, I was available every single day for work, Now Holly's probably regretting that weekends are never the same. So yeah. But you just got to just be available, just make yourself available, even if it's for a game in, I don't know, the Isle of Man or something like that for 30 quid or something like that. Just do it for experience, and it's something to put yourself down for on your CV now. You can say I've done this for that, or whatever. It's frightening, really. I'd say, giving up regular to do something be freelance.
But you said
But
earlier
I'm
that
happy I've done it. So
yeah,
Mm.
amazing. We
yeah,
said earlier you did 4 years voluntarily, so you've got
yeah,
4 years worth of experience where you're not getting paid. I mean, that shows that you've clearly got a passion for it. And you mentioned earlier on about turning up to that first match hours early because you were keen to get
yeah.
involved and make sure that it went well. So I think that speaks volumes for what someone must have seen in you to give
Well,
a break.
I still do it now. I
Mm.
still turn up ridiculously early for games, just in case there's a problem,
Mm.
So, in case there's a problem with the equipment, I need to fix it. There's a few times when that's happened, So, I'm always there's one time like a couple of seasons ago when I couldn't. I was really looking forward to doing a commentary with a former Chesterfield player at Stockport. I'd been assured by that club that there was a line, a BBC line working, and when you get there, it's not working, So, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it to try and get out on air, and you feel kind of helpless and lost, and you don't really know what to do. You just frankly apologising to your people, and the other things that they're complete out of your control, and you just feel helpless
Mm.
by and thankfully these situations don't happen on a regular basis, so but you just feel lost really about it. So having to do reports down the old way, down the phone, that
Mm.
sounds crackly like it's from Eastern Europe from many years ago, so rather than a crisp clear ISDN line. But yeah, so you get frustrated with that. But yeah, I'm a stickler for getting there way early. So, and I've always kept that going. So, and making myself available for work,
Mm.
So, like I say, I can do that. And so yeah, yeah,
And I think there's loads of hidden messages because I think the way almost that you explain the journey is like it was almost quite simple, but actually I think there's so many hidden messages in sort of what you said, which is obviously things like turning up early, just showing up, being there. but there's a lot of podcast material, there's a lot of content out there about side hustles and all of this advice. But obviously, you're doing all of this before that sort of oh, it's a side gig or it's a side hustle or it's a actually you just naturally followed your passion, and ultimately because of that passion and I suppose talent at what you're doing, it then gave you that platform to then transition. And I think a lot of people, they don't actually engage with their passion. It's just like, oh, I like this, but I'm not going to actually get in the depth of it or in the weeds of it. And obviously, you were just doing that naturally alongside what you were doing day to day, even if what you were doing day to day was crap. You were
Mm,
like, well, I'm going to go and do this is my spare time. And ultimately, what you've done is you've turned a hobby into a
yeah,
career.
yeah, I totally agree with you there. Yes, it's worked out in that many respects. Yeah. Took a while, didn't it? So it took a while to get sort of practicing, and took a hatred of a job as well to kind of get to the point where, right, okay, now is going to be my passion. Now I'm going to have to take this step. Yeah, and there is hidden messages, and I guess while even speaking now is the fact that, like, I think I like speaking to people. It being almost being a radio person is being customer facing, isn't it? Because you're speaking to people even though they can't always answer back, you know, um, with you. So description and telling people, these things are kind of what the messages I'm sort of getting from that, really. You're absolutely right then to follow the passion that I've done. Yeah, to see something um as a passion, going through the voluntary stuff and sort of learning on the job, um, uh, covering Chesterfield for them really gave me a grounding and a platform for doing what I'm doing now. Absolutely. Yeah, without the 4 years, I don't know if I'd been able to do it. Obviously, listening to people, I think it's always important to listen to other commentators and how they do it. There isn't an ideal commentator, by the way. People, laud, for example, this week's favorite commentator is Clive Tilsley, isn't it? Just because he's
Yeah.
retiring.
Mm.
But when he was doing commentary for Man United, everybody properly slagged him off when he was doing it for ITV. You couldn't see a social media post without Clive Tilsley being in there and how they didn't like him. So, but because he's retiring, they absolutely adore him this week. So Sam Matterface gets it all the time these days. He's a different commentator to me. He's a different commentator to John Murray. He's a different commentator to, I think. There isn't a kit which you just have to follow a path. Everybody's descriptive in their own way. And TV commentary and radio commentary are two separate things as well, which I've learned quite doing the watching bets, which I described before, going down to do the Japanese games, was doing it for TV. So I'm having to sort of be a bit different. Don't be too descriptive because
Mm.
you don't need to be. But I need to know which player's on the ball. So I need to research that player a lot more, I'd say, than I would do for a radio one. It's easy with Chesterfield because I know bit more about their players. But the research part of it, I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it.
So what's the ideal research? You go into a game, you're watching two teams from Japan that you've never seen play
Mm,
before. Presumably, you need some sound bites or a bit of information on each player. You need to look visually what they look like so you can recognize them in the middle of the game. Or I mean,
yeah.
what's the kind of baseline amount of research you take into a new game or a new team?
Well, I've got like it's going to take me about a day to do
Okay.
one of those games. So, the club websites are brilliant. And honestly, you couldn't do this job without the internet these
Mm.
days. Honestly, it's fascinating. You get club websites, you get various statistic websites like Soccerway is a good one. They do a lot of games around the world. And yeah, just finding out little pen picks. Google is your friend as well. So little backstories as well to find out. For example, if this Japanese game, for example, had it was, I don't know, the 100th anniversary of the stadium opening or something, and the guy who cut the ribbon 10 years ago or something to celebrate another thing was in the crowd, and the camera panned to this person, they'd be expecting to know who he is,
Yeah.
So, I try and find out information beforehand that they're going to, this guy's on there and get a picture of him. So I've got some idea of who he is and describing it to the people there. If somebody did come up on camera I didn't know, I would just sort of let it go blank. I think I just they wouldn't say anything at all about it really, because I wouldn't be in charge of the camera or the pictures. So yeah, there's one good example really I've got of one item when I was completely flummoxed during a game. It was an Israeli game, and so I'd done all the prep, working out these two sides. So, I spent a day sort of working out, got my squad listings and everything, the recent stats and things I could sort of go to. And anyway, the players came out with the numbers on the back, but the names are in Hebrew. Now, Hebrew is not my first language. So a little bit difficult then trying to read the names on the back of the shirt there.
Especially when they're right and left as well, probably.
Yeah, I had the numbers. Which was helpful. So that was fine. I could go away. But then with about 10 minutes to go, they brought on a player who didn't have a number and just had his name on the shirt. So that was just in Hebrew. So he came on and immediately he got involved in the ball. So there was a long ball knocked over the top. He was running through. I couldn't say who it was because I didn't know his name. So he got hacked down. So I immediately went to the defender hacking him down. So focus on him. And thankfully, he didn't take the penalty. So, so I was quite flummoxed with that. So I got away with that one, really, in many respects. So yeah, it's all about trying to get as much research as you can impossible. But sometimes there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing you can do. So.
I don't know if you saw the Romania game last night, but it would have been pretty easy to identify Hadji's son because he had a fishnet on his head. It looked like he was about to get into a stint as a chef afterwards. So his hair didn't fly out.
I didn't fly out.
Do you see it? It's quite bizarre.
No, I didn't. No, I've not managed to see every game so far.
No, I haven't actually. No.
No.
How do you feel?
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, Paul. I was a bit of a delay. I was just going to say, how do you feel about watching games for fun? Does your mind automatically kick into commentary mode if you're sitting there with Holly watching a game in Spain, or are you able to switch it off?
Honestly, last night I was watching what game was it, or the night before or something? Watching a game, and no, I don't go into the commentaries. I'm not as critical as on other people's commentaries because I know how difficult it is. You see. But I think Holly and Katie would sort of started. I think it was about 20 minutes to go, and I got booted off for them to watch Love Island. So I had to put my iPad on, so I get my headphones on and watch the game. So yeah, I do watch it. Games for fun. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not always at work, but I've just done a stint doing commentary for cricket for the month on various betting websites. So the T20 World Cup. So I've covered about 18 games of those. So it's been very busy, as well as going to Spain as well. So it's been a very busy month, and they've just done. So quite nice for the bit of a breather.
And do you prefer football or cricket commentary, or are they quite different beasts?
They are quite different, yeah. And it's still descriptive, of course. Football's obviously a lot more fast-paced, isn't it? And cricket, you've got to be, again, very descriptive with what you can do, but you can go down different alleyways and different channels, and you can bring up you can do a lot more storytelling, I'd say, over cricket because you got a bit more time. And one of the passions I've had, one of the things I've actually managed to fulfill is to work. I got a day's cricket for BBC Radio Sussex, covering them in the county championship. So I was online on BBC, pages and everything. So that's another passion of mine, being able to be successfully ticked off and that was on YouTube and that. So yeah, absolutely loved it as well, covering for Agent Harms at Derby, so I didn't have to travel far, so it was quite handy. But covering it for Radio Sussex, then I got into interview Paul Farbrace after the game and everything.
Oh, right.
So yeah, I love that.
Fantastic.
He was a very nice chap. So yeah. Obviously, they just absolutely thrashed Derby, so he was absolutely delighted. So didn't get a chance to ask him any difficult questions, really. So
absolutely, and I guess with cricket, I suppose you have to get a little bit more tactical than you do with football, because I suppose because one of the things I always think about with pundits, commentators, is the sort of depth and degree that they'll actually go into things like tactics and stuff like that. But I guess with cricket, I suppose you've got to kind of know the game. You've got to explain, this is that's always, XYZ has thrown down a googly, or or he's done an off, cover drive, or
Yeah,
what. I guess you've got to sort of actually be a little bit more explicit in the sport.
I agree. I think even if you got to have played at some level, I think at very amateur level that I played at, very amateur, but I can talk about it. I know the position. I know what a dressing room's like, for example, so, and the nuances of the game. I know exactly what they do. The game hasn't changed in many respects, so
Yeah.
the basics are still there. Um, so yeah, I was quite. I think I was confident, and I think qualified enough to sort of know a little bit about it. Actually, it helps having a pundit with you who is sort of involved in the game as well, for they'll know a little bit extra, so what they've been practicing and stuff like that. Things you don't actually get to see as a commentator, somebody involved in the day-to-day running of things these days, what practices are they doing right now? It's a bit like football in many respects as well, that you could do with a sort of not an old footballer next year, but a footballer that's sort of younger version that you need to see what practices that they can do. Um, so yeah, it helps when you've got it, and you do have to have a certain bit of knowledge about it as well. Yeah, you're absolutely right there.
One of the most amazing things I ever saw. I love the footage of it. Is when Shane Warne had the on mic camera, and I don't know if you've seen this, but where he's explaining what he's doing every ball. And
Oh yeah,
have
yeah, I've
you
seen it.
seen that?
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's brilliant.
it's just, I mean, just the insight that you get in terms of how his mind is thinking, in terms of how he's kind of toying with the batsman. He's like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to chuck him down a wrong one, because this is he's going to do this, and then he's going to do that, and then he said, "Look, from what he's just done, I'm now going to throw it down, going to throw down whatever ball it was, I can't remember." And it was like he was telling the future. It was just like it is just absolutely unbelievable. And I do find, especially, I suppose, I guess it would be more with pundits, wouldn't it? Paul, who would be sort of doing that as opposed to commentators. But it's kind of, I just that level of insight, and in football you don't get it very much. I think you don't get enough for me. It's not, and I'm sure there's a good reason why, but you don't necessarily get that level of. You kind of get it at, on Monday Night Football. You'll get that depth in it, and I guess you can't do it within the commentary. But yeah, I thought that was just such an amazing, like, wow, what an insight into the game. Like, my brain doesn't understand the sport to that level.
There's a man in control of knowing what he's doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he knows exactly. He's had this scenario in his head many times before, and so he can go to say, right, that the batsman there's just done this, so I can go to A. I've got L somewhere else in the back of my brain. I might pick that out now.
Yeah.
So yeah, incredible amount of sort of knowledge about what he's doing, and he took that into the commentary box as well. He knew he could see that. He could see what ball was about to be delivered. So absolute express mind. That's the kind of thing that you need from going from a commentary. Shane Warne would be from playing to into the commentary box, an ideal fit. Absolutely brilliant, and value for that. And it's just a shame, obviously, he's not with us anymore. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, indeed, with football, because it's so fast paced, it's a kind of in a reflective mood, aren't you? Because you can look at things, and you use the example of Monday Night Football there. They've had a weekend to digest what's happened,
Mm,
and they can go through exactly what they've seen and see, right, well, he moved out of there, so that he went into that position there. While the
mm,
game's being played, it's only at times it's sort of guesswork, isn't it?
yeah.
That you think, right, well, he's moved out of position there, so I think if they attack down that right hand side, this is what's going to happen. Hopefully, it results in a goal. So it's not the same,
Really
but
good point.
you've
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah
Yeah.
you've got to, because football's so quick. and you got to make quick, instant decisions, and that's why there's so many mistakes. Really, I think in football that the pressure's on for them. But then it's so reflective after the game that you look back and see, well, they played this position, this formation. Maybe next time we'll use this formation to try and get them. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to put an explicit rating on this podcast episode now because you met the great man once, didn't you, Mr. Warren?
I did.
wow.
Yeah, no,
Say meat.
yeah, no, yeah, excuse the language ahead of time, but I used to work in Soho, and my office sort of came out onto Kingly Street, which is just next to Carnaby Street, and I literally opened the door, walked like 2 steps out onto the street, and Shane Warne was just like standing outside a pub on a corner, and I was just like, that's one person I've got to go and say hi to. Started walking up to him, and before I'd even opened my mouth,
I thought you went shh.
yeah, well, I literally was like, I went open mouth and basically sort of managed to get out like shh of Shane, and he was like, fuck off, mate. I don't hold it against him in any way, shape, or form. I thought it was, and I just said to him, absolutely brilliant. I'll leave you to it. And yeah, no, what a guy. But yeah, it was. I had a fairly similar experience with Liam Gallagher on Carnaby Street as well. Actually,
It's to do with Carnaby Street.
Yeah, I know, it's something to do with it. I guess people are hanging around there to talk to them. But yeah, anyway.
I've only ever met Shane Warne in a waxwork at Madame Tussauds, so that's as close as I've got to him. So yeah.
I remember Matt and I took the kids to Trent Bridge to watch. I think it must have been Nottingham Notts versus Lancashire because Jimmy was there.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, and the rain stopped play, so we saw it coming, and we quickly ran down to the front where they came in, and we got a photo of the kids with Jimmy Anderson, which is absolutely legend. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. So what's next, Paul? So what's next for you in terms of commentary? Are you happy doing what you're doing? What would be the ideal game or a scenario or event for you to commentate on? You talked earlier on about ticking off something along the way. What else is left to tick off?
Yeah, I've commentated at Wembley. I've been pitch side at Wembley as well, done interviews down there. So absolutely love that. That was brilliant. So I'd love to do that again. I've commentated on Cricket World Cup finals, but not actually at the Lords or anything, though, unfortunately, in the studio in Leeds. But it's certain things that I've done. I've still been able to do it. And
did you commentate on the Super Over?
Did the T20 final? I did do the Super Over, yes, and I was immensely confused about what was happening as well.
So was everyone.
So, but because none of us thought they would ever to get that particular point, and me and my co-commentator were absolutely flabbergasted about what ruling is going to happen here if they ever try. We didn't know. We didn't know what was going to happen. So, thankfully, with about 10 overs to go, they brought up the rulings about what was going to happen. So we managed to sort of go off those instructions. But what a game to commentate on.
It was incredible. I mean, it was quite dull for most 3/4 of the game, and then it just came to life, didn't it? There's so many things that happened. And one of my favourite bits that sticks in my head is where the Kiwi guy, I forget his name, excuse me, he's like, by the barest of margins, right?
Ian Smith. Yeah, Ian Smith. So the commentator, yeah. He does rugby as well for New Zealand television. But you say dull, Pete. I say fascinating. That final.
Maybe that was a bit harsh. Yeah. But it didn't really take off. I know what you mean. It wasn't dull.
Yeah.
That was maybe the wrong turn of phrase, but it didn't really ignite until later. It was brilliant final. Absolutely. Brilliant.
That can be cricket though. That can be cricket. That can be. It can be the
chess match.
And you often find that as well. Yeah, exactly with the test match, which the Americans don't understand about playing for 5 days for a draw. But it can be built up. You don't get the drama, and it takes time for it to. Because in America, obviously, I love baseball. I know you do with the Red Sox as well. Have you got a baseball team, Adam, or are you not?
Phillies probably, but I'm or the Lancaster Barnstormers, which is my brother. He lives in Lancaster City in Pennsylvania, so probably the Lancaster Barnstormers. Yeah.
Oh, good. That's good. Well, you'll know the nuances of the game where obviously in baseball, everything's explosive. It has to be
Mm.
now, doesn't it? And everything's like so. But again, what I find is baseball very much like cricket, and this is a build
Mm.
up, and you're waiting to get to the ninth inning or even extra innings that you get
Mm.
there. You can have okay, games can be finished pretty quickly if they get 10 runs in the first inning, then they're struggling, aren't they? But
Yeah.
I went to the Mets Phillies game the other week at the London Stadium for the game two. Went to game one as well. But I sat on my own for that second game, and I watched it, and the Phillies got off to a good start, but the Mets came back and they won the game right on the last sort of the end. So it was just an amazing bit of theatre that it was that you get with
Yeah.
cricket. Yeah, you can get that. The lower scoring games are often the best ones,
Mm.
and with that final, it was. You're right, Pete. To start with, it was pretty dull because not a great deal was happening. New Zealand was struggling to score the runs. England were pinning them back. And then England were the same. They got into a rut. They were
Mm.
struggling. They lost a load of wickets, and they were struggling to get the runs. And all of a sudden, Butler and Stokes just gradually got this partnership going, didn't they? In the end,
Mm.
they just fell short in terms of it was level on scores, and we had to go to an amazing super over where they even then you had to go to the last ball for it to be won. I mean, incredible final, and even Holly watched it, so that just shows edge of your seat stuff. But again, it was free to air, wasn't it, on Channel 4? I
Yeah,
think
it
it was.
was.
So we haven't had that. We need a lot more stuff where people can actually watch the games. I think in many respects. Sorry, we're going back to games that thing. But what would I want to do? I'm happy with BBC Radio Sheffield right now. Loving the work that the Rob State and Andy Giddins and Adam Oxley give me because I cover Chesterfield on a regular basis. So, but I also get to cover Rotherham and Barnsley and Doncaster and other clubs as well in the region. So yeah, absolutely loving that at weekends, traveling up and down the country, following
I've
Chesterfield
actually got
about.
a funny story about BBC Radio Sheffield. I wanted to go and do some radio production. Sorry to
All
interrupt.
right.
But I remember sending a letter to BBC Radio Sheffield to basically apply for a job. Um, and the guy, I mean, I can't remember the guy's name, but he sent me a letter back saying, actually, it was an email, and he said it was really harsh, and basically I'd made a spelling mistake in my introductory email, and he absolutely tore me a new one in this email back. And to be fair, it's a life lesson I've never forgotten. He was just like, I
No,
suggest
really.
if you want to apply for a job, you need to check your spelling before you send it. And it was a lot harsher than that, but I can picture the building of BBC Radio Sheffield very well. I used to drive past it a lot. It's not too far from the Leadmill, is it, actually?
No, no, just around the corner, Shoreham Street. Yeah,
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 Shoreham Street, that's right. And Bruce, who's been on this podcast, used to live on Shoreham Street. So yeah, and I can picture the
oh,
building very well.
yeah, yeah. Regularly go there. So yeah, it's indeed, and sometimes like so you take harsh criticism like that, don't you, as well? And you can deal with it in two ways, can't you? You can crumble or you can go forward. So yeah, I've had many people like to express to me, I think that that your commentary is not that great. Usually via not to my face, but usually
Or
via
troll.
yeah, exactly. So but yeah, so you just take these things, but I get many more good things coming out of it than dull things. But yeah, at the minute, like so, everything's going all right. Like I say, got a few clients with work. Yeah, Radio Sheffield being one of them. Spotlight Sports Group as well, who I also work for on occasions, and yeah, pretty good. So yeah.
Well, I think that sounds fantastic. It sounds like you're in a great place, and I love
Mm,
the story earlier on about when we talked about the career path. And you know definitely no career path. You didn't really know what you wanted to do, and now you found
nothing.
yourself in the ultimate place that's that you live in the dream effectively in terms of what you want to do. You're watching the sports that you love and commentating on it, and and like you say, giving back to that kind of customer facing element to it, and allowing painting the picture for people back home so they can listen to it as well. So.
Yeah, I love it. Just being descriptive about it, and yeah, I love it, and I'll never take it for granted. Ever take it for granted. It could finish tomorrow, but I'd be happy though. So I'd look back and think that that was a great career. I haven't said that as a career path. Then I don't know what I'd do. So I Probably go and work on the trains or something. I don't know.
Cross that bridge when you come to it.
I think
Yeah.
also, like, again, there's a couple of other things which I think has been fantastic to listen to. Is, you've said research quite a few times, and obviously preparation. And I think what that really demonstrates is a real, well, credit to you, but also I think in general it's a really good lesson, I think, for people, which is, all right, it's on the surface, commentating for sport sounds fantastic, glamorous, enjoyable, but obviously it takes a huge amount of work, preparation, research, time. And you said, I love the research, I love the preparation, and I think a lot of people don't think about that side of it, and sort of earn the right to do that job and that thing, their passion. Just because it's your passion, you've still got to put the work in. And I think it's been great hearing your story and hearing the sort of the way that you go about it. And I think there's a lot in there that maybe even you take for granted because you enjoy it. But I think for a lot of people, there's so many lessons in there.
Yeah, I've liked talking about it, to be honest. It's not very often to get a chance to describe what I've done and now in the position that I'm on. It's quite cathartic, I think. So yeah, well, thank you for the platform and that. So, but yeah, first and foremost, I think you've also got to have people thinking that you're good, so otherwise I wouldn't be on air. So and thankfully the people I work with at Radio Sheffield, sports editor and Andy Giddinson, Rob Staten, and Adam Oxley think I'm good enough to be on the BBC. So that I'm ever so grateful for that as well. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
Well, it's been great hearing your story. I've heard, over the years, heard little snippets of it, Paul. So it's good to
Thank you.
hear the story all the way through and have a catch up and a chat. And I think we mentioned Matt 5 times, so I'm not going to give him any commission for that. But no,
You can't. No.
Great. Thank you very much for coming on.
No problem.
Time. Just before we close, Paul, just one more question, if I can, and if we could go back to 17-year-old Paul Fisher, just before you left home and embarked on your journey, and you've gone through your career and changed paths, and now you're doing what you love, and you've learned a lot and all that hard work and effort that you put in. If you could give your 17-year-old self one bit of advice going back in time, based on what you know now, what do you think that might be?
Just try every way to either go send letters out to the BBC or to any other production people wanting football commentators. If I could known at that particular point that I wanted to do it, then that's what I'd done. Or try and beg my way with my meager qualifications to try and get myself to do college and then university. But there weren't many courses doing commentary in them days. So these days you can do a specific degree in it, you see. So yeah. Probably a little bit more learning what I do. But then again, the path wouldn't have gone how I would have wanted it, would it? So all these things wouldn't have happened. So but yeah, maybe a qualification in perhaps what I'm doing would be nice.
It's interesting looking back. That's a great answer. It's interesting looking back, isn't it? Because if you cut the corners with the bits of the career that you really didn't end up enjoying, there were elements along the way that you really enjoyed, like the customer facing stuff was clearly a passion, and the travel stuff. So it's almost helped guide who you are today. That then you can use that in your role today. So
yeah, it took me a while, but yeah, I've got to been doing this for the past 14 years now. So late bloomer. But yeah, absolutely loving it. Yeah, and I think you're right. Like I've touched on before, just like talking to people. I think so. Telling them what's happening.
But I think late bloom is good as well, Paul. I don't think everyone finds necessarily what they want to do, because I think there's a lot of pressure. You must get into a job at 18 or whatever. I think people take time to find this stuff. I mean, my sister just got a degree aged 40 plus, and I think there's people discover this at different times and grow at different times, and I don't think there's one cookie cutter way to approach a career. Is there? I think
absolutely. It's been really great to me, Paul. Really appreciate you sharing your story. I think there's so much to learn in there for other people. It's and really pleased for you that you get to live your passion. It's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Yes, I do really. Thanks for inviting me, guys. It's been brilliant.
No problem. Great to see you. Yeah, best of luck with the summer and the new season, and look forward to catching up for a beer soon.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks. So Nottingham. We'll always have to go to Nottingham again.
Exactly.
The beer
festival. It's been a while. We'll do that.
You're more than welcome, Adam. You're more than welcome.
Yeah, I'll see you there for sure. Fantastic.
Thanks, mate. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Cheers, mate.
But I